Before we analyze Zaid, Adeline, or any of the events in this story, I think there's a more interesting place to start. Why did this become the first dark romance for so many readers, including me? I read this book in 2025 in the summer, picked it up because of TikTok, and was my introduction to dark romance and romance. And it seems I'm not the only one. It's been the first book of its kind in the genre for a lot of people. There are entire videos and so many comments on TikTok on people stating how it was their first introduction to dark romance. Actually, an overwhelming number. So, let's see some of them. This one says, "This was my first dark romance because I saw someone say it gives Gomez and Morticia vibes." I think they meant Gomez and Morticia from the Addams Family. And they are goat, so I was like, cool, I'll love it. But when I read it, I was like, huh? And I loved it eventually, but I was like, excuse me? Or also, was my first dark romance, haven't looked back since. This is exactly what I did. They were my first dark romance read. Or these ones. This was also my first dark romance and now I'm in love. Just started to tip my toes into dark romance. Just finished Does It Hurt and have just downloaded this. I just finished a duet today, my first dark romance too, Obsessed and Broken. This has been my first dark romance and I'm dreading it to end. What should I read next? I absolutely loved both of these. Also my first dark romance. Just finished Where's Molly? That's another novel by the same author. First dark romance I ever read, and first of all, I was disturbed. Then my psyche was eternally altered and I loved it. My first duet into dark romance and also totally blind going in. It will be my first one too. Should I be scared? I'm 90% through the first book and that's my first too. I had to start looking things up because I'm like, damn, is this normal? Or high on the scale for dark romance. I am happy to know it's high, haha. This was also my first dark romance, and girl, I was shook. Honestly, Haunting Adeline was my introduction to dark romance too, and even though I thought it was tame, my kingdom for a darker story. So, as we can see, mixed reactions. I'm reading Haunting Adeline for the first time, 42 pages down. Wish me luck. These books were in my intro into dark romance. The Hunting Adeline can be extremely triggering. If you can, I would listen to the audiobook. It's even darker. The spice is hot. These were my first two. Now I've read Den of Vipers, the Ritual series, Tarnished Embers, and Lethal Vows. I'm here to stay. So this person clearly liked it a lot and went for even darker books. I don't know the other names, but I have heard that the Ritual series is actually pretty dark. This diet, I assume she means to say duet, was literally my first spicy book experience. I handled it okay until the last part of hunting. The whipping here. What? On the tree? I was so done. Hunting I loved. Wait, what? What? Oh my god, to be honest, I haven't finished Haunting Adeline, the second book, so I thought that the surprises were over, but clearly not. Haunting Adeline was the first dark romance book I've ever read. I've been obsessed since. So I think you get the point. There's so many other comments and videos like these ones. But why is that? Why is it that it became the first dark romance book so many have read? I think that actually there are several reasons. So we're gonna try to break them down. First of all, I think that it became a gateway book. What I mean by that is that I think that its popularity created a snowball effect. Someone new to the genre might think if thousands of people started here, maybe I should too. Second of all, I think that because it was popularized partly on TikTok actually rewards emotional reactions. that is that it becomes the default recommendation, not necessarily because it is objectively the best, but it is the most like culturally visible. TikTok isn't really optimized for nuanced literary discussion. It's more so to make people stop scrolling and take action, such as buying the book, or some hooks can be very effective and they spread a lot faster than, say, a video about here's an interesting exploration of attachment theory in romance. Haunting Adeline contains enough shocking moments that people genuinely react strongly to it, and those reactions become content themselves, such as my reaction earlier to hearing that there has been some sort of whipping or whatever near a tree. I was absolutely shook because I had no idea that that would happen in the books. Then we have the whole idea that it feels like a shared experience. And I think that this is actually quite underrated. There we go. Because when you pick up a book, you know it's gonna be popular. You get to share it. Reading becomes social. You're joining a conversation. It sort of feels like you're no longer reading alone. That's powerful, especially for people who haven't read much fiction or feel like their choices may be judged. It's entering a space where you know you'll be accepted because everyone is excited about it. Number 4. It's accessible. What I mean by that is that the prose isn't especially dense. The story moves quickly, things happen. For someone coming back to reading after a few years, that's much less intimidating than beginning with a 1,000-page fantasy full of political systems and invented languages. You simply don't have to work very hard to keep turning the pages. And finally, number 5, curiosity beats comfort. I think that the marketing around the book created a very specific kind of curiosity because people weren't thinking, oh, is this a good book? What could I learn from it? Um, I think that the main drive was the curiosity. Why is everyone talking about it? That's a very different motivation. Because sometimes people read a book simply because they want to understand the cultural conversation. All in all, I didn't have any sort of idea what I was getting myself into. Not judging by the cover, not the genre. I expected romance. I didn't know what this dark romance could be. And no, the trigger warnings did not help. You know, if we are to judge a book by its cover, which is exactly what we're going to do right now, you see that it's mostly black with white text. We have these ornamental flourishes alluding to gothic romance, I guess. The rose, also romance related. The skull, which alludes to something sinister that might be happening. I suppose it's supposed to prepare you, but not really. But yeah, I mean, I think it is pretty appropriate for the genre of the book. It's better than those very juvenile covers for adult romance books that sort of seem like they are marketed towards teens. That's pretty terrible. So I guess at least this is better and more representative. Also, I thought that I knew what I was getting into because I read the trigger warnings. Nope, I didn't. The warnings told me what kind of content was present, but they didn't communicate the intensity, the frequency, or the emotional weight of encountering these themes in the story. So I would like to actually talk about the limitations of the trigger warnings as a communication tool, not necessarily judging them of why are they here. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the trigger warnings prepared me for the subject, but they did not prepare me for the experience of reading the novel. And by that I mean, how central are the themes? How often do they appear? How emotionally immersive are they? How quickly do they arrive? How much breathing room exists between them? Those are qualities of the reading experience, and perhaps trigger warning system simply isn't designed to communicate them. One thing that I realized much later was the pacing. Difficult scenes arrived in such quick succession that I rarely felt like I had the time to emotionally process one before the story had already moved on to the next. So I felt like the novel prioritized momentum over giving the reader the emotional space to process what just happened. And of course, you can put the book down, you can close it, you can take a few hours, but it's also constructed in such a way that it is so addictive that you don't want to put it down. Also, as I read, I found myself questioning whether the novel was encouraging the reader to interpret certain dynamics. Here I'm referring mostly to the non or dubious consent aspect of the trigger warnings romantically. That's something that I want to explore carefully later in the series because I think it's one of the book's most controversial aspects. I read Haunting Adeline in approximately 2 days because I forced myself to pry away from the book, but the cliffhanger was so good. I actually read about half of Hunting Adeline as well, but I did stop at some point because I couldn't continue because of how dark it was. So I don't actually know how it ends. And this year, in 2026, I reread it about 2 months before the announcement that it is going to be adapted into a movie. I am not going to address that now because I think that it is important to see with our own eyes what happened in the book and make an informed opinion. And you might agree with me, we might disagree, but that's definitely something for another video. So that's about all that I had to say in this video. I hope that it's a little bit more clear why this book has become so popular and why it has been the first dark romance, an introduction to dark romance to so many people, including myself. And in the next video, we are going to talk about the main characters in this book, Zaid and Adeline, and how they go from strangers to being in each other's proximity. I think that's super interesting and relevant. A lot of things happen before they even meet face to face and talk face to face for the first time. So I'm super excited to get into that, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.